Now, in this edition of Let's Talk Some Star Wars, we'll be taking a look at the results of the poll that asks the question, what time period or era do you think the next Star Wars movies should explore? As usual, then I'll also be reading and responding to some of your comments, as well as showing off the artwork that was sent into me this week. But before we do get to that, let me start out by bringing up a rather interesting rumor that's relevant to the topic at hand, which is that EA is supposedly working on a Knights of the Old Republic project, one that wouldn't be so much a remake of the first and or second games, but instead one that would incorporate certain aspects of both games into a brand new game in order to bring certain things into the current or Disney canon. What does that mean exactly? Well, hard to say for sure, but it sounds like this isn't just about keeping the story more or less intact and updating the graphics and gameplay. This sounds like parts of both existing games, Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2, would be combined into one single game with likely brand new things added or brought in as well. And honestly, I'm equal parts terrified and intrigued by this possibility. I mean, yeah, I'd love an updated version of both Knights of the Republic games, but I don't know about combining them into one game and adding to that or changing it around. I get that they might have to do some minor tweaks to fit it into the current canon, especially if they do have future plans for the time period that would conflict with what the games are as is. But you'd think they would have learned their lesson at Lucasfilm about messing around too much with pre-established characters that people love, a list that Revan is certainly on. Anyway, I'm sure I'll talk more about that when if these rumors get confirmed at some point. But for now, let's get to this week's poll, where we'll see that 67% or 2/3 of people thought that the Old Republic is the time period the next Star Wars movies should explore. We then had 12% who thought the High Republic era is where they should go next, which is the time period roughly 400 years before the prequels, and the rumored era the next movies will take place during. Next then we had 10% of people who thought hundreds or thousands of years beyond the sequel trilogy is what the next movie should tackle, and finally 5% who thought shortly after the sequel trilogy, and another 5% who thought it should be a different time and place entirely. And this was yet another one of those times when I really wasn't all that surprised by the results. I figured the Old Republic would win this, and by a sizable margin, but thought it'd be cool to see how much or little interest people had in these other time periods and why, or why they think the Old Republic is a good choice or a bad one. So let's now right away move to the comments and start, as we always do, with the top rated comment, which this week came to us from Demos Z, who said, "I'd rather just them retcon the sequels as a new Empire propaganda fed to the masses by Empress Rey Palpatine." And there were, as you might expect, a lot of comments very similar to this, or comments that said something like this one from Ebi Tempura, who wants to see a competent version of the sequel trilogy made, where all the old heroes go and actually do something worthwhile again, one not brought to us by Kathleen Kennedy and company. And as a lot of you know, I'm not the biggest fan of the sequel trilogy. Not to get into it all again here, but very simply put, the biggest issues were poor planning, and it lacked creativity and added nothing new while ending in almost the exact same way Return of the Jedi had. And though I'd be okay with them simply sweeping them under the rug and trying again, and as I keep saying for fun, I'm working on my own version of them, it's my next fanfiction project. Anyway, though I wouldn't shed a tear if they got retconned or removed from the canon, it's never going to happen for a couple different reasons. Now, first of all, there certainly are people out there who love the sequels and would be quite upset if they got retconned, and I don't know that Disney wants to piss off one section of the fanbase to appease another. Second, sadly, several of the original actors have now passed away, and many more of them, I don't think, would be interested in doing it all over again. The third reason is simply money. They'd have to spend all this money to remake movies that might end up no better than what we originally got, and that most average moviegoers would skip because they don't want or care about sequel trilogy remakes. Fourth, they'd have to admit their utter failure, and I really don't see them doing that. Fifth, you can't give fans veto power. There's a fine line between listening to and pleasing your fan base and flat out letting them call the shots. And don't get me wrong here. I fully believe they should listen to the feedback of the fans and strive to make movies they'll enjoy. But remaking films is a bit much to ask for, unless it's the Ghostbusters franchise we're talking about. And look, I know most people who say they should remake the sequel trilogy don't really expect Disney to actually do that. It's just their way of expressing how truly disappointed they were with the movies. But what really needs to be done to turn Star Wars around is to focus on the future, to have a plan in place this time around, and to get the right people in there to execute said plan. Okay, with that said, and I do think the sequel trilogy and what happened with it is very relevant when discussing where Star Wars should go next. Anyway, let's get to some more comments, starting with this one from Darth Revan, who said, "The High Republic era seems like a stupid idea to me. Who should the villains be? It must not be the Sith, and that time period was supposed to be peaceful, so what is the point of making a Star Wars movie in that period?" And, well, the only answer I have for you is that in the old expanded universe, the High Republic era, or again roughly a few hundred years before the Skywalker saga, was largely unexplored, which means they probably feel like they have a lot of wiggle room to do whatever they want since we fans have nothing to compare whatever they do against, all the while forgetting or ignoring the fact that you brought up, which is that the Jedi should not encounter the Sith in this time period, since, as we learned in Episode 1, the Jedi thought the Sith had been extinct for 1,000 years. And as far as the rumors go anyway, the idea here will be that this is a time of great expansion for the Jedi, probably because the Sith are absent and they have nothing better to do. And they're going to try and spread their influence across the galaxy, and maybe in the process they meet a brand new threat. But really, I don't know what they're planning with this time period, because again, as you pointed out, this was supposed to be a time of relative peace, though I suppose one large-scale conflict in the 1,000 years since the Sith were thought to be gone would still be considered a time of relative peace. Okay, next up we have this comment from Isaac Davidson who said, "I want to see if Rey was successful in rebuilding the Jedi Order hundreds or thousands of years after the rise of Skywalker." And you know, if the sequel trilogy had been widely considered fantastic and everyone loved it, that probably would have made the most sense to fast forward a few thousand years into the future and imply there had been, again, a time of relative peace for the galaxy until some new threat emerged. Plus, like the aforementioned High Republic era, it's a wide open and pretty much unexplored time period. Moving on now, we have this comment from Jacob Esenberg, who said, "If they couldn't get the sequel era right, even though they had an endless amount of comics and books to use, I don't want to see them butcher the old Republic era. Just do something different, please." And well, you can bet pretty much anything and everything you got that they'll eventually delve into the old Republic time period with some sort of content. There's too much money to be made from exploring a time period that a lot of fans absolutely love. The challenge for them will be balancing what's already established with anything new that they want to add or change, because I don't think they'll make the same mistake they made with the sequel trilogy and just wipe the slate clean and start over totally new or fresh. Much of the old Republic, I'd have to imagine, will be kept intact and tweaked for whatever plans they have for it. Next up here we have this comment from Zeke Craft, who said, "I really dislike the idea of exploring the past. It's tough to put the galaxy in peril when we know everything is just fine in the future. Aside from time travel changing the past where the stakes are suddenly real again, the best a story in the past can do is make future stories more relevant. I'd much prefer Star Wars only moving forward. Given the way the sequel trilogy went, I'd prefer they bury it and move on hundreds or thousands of years, so we are in a time period with completely new characters, and they really shouldn't bother having anyone related to past characters. It would be the coolest thing to do a reboot that wouldn't erase the past." This isn't even strictly a Star Wars opinion. My friends love the MCU, but no one is interested in a Black Widow movie. There's very little it could do to be relevant, and having to watch a whole movie for maybe 10 minutes of relevant universe building is not worth it. And you know, as much as I love the old Republic time period, and would love to see them make content for it, or make a series of films within it, assuming they can indeed get those films right, you always do have the problem of, we know the future. We know things are eventually going to be A-okay. Or in the case of the prequels, for example, we knew everything's going to end up not okay. It was all a matter of how we get to that dark place. Still, though you certainly do make a great point, I think that the Skywalker era is so far into the future compared to the old Republic era that you'd still feel like you have major stakes. Because If we're going thousands of years back, the galaxy could be on the precipice of falling upon dark times that may last hundreds of years or more. Plus, it's really about building the characters of that time period and making us care about what dark or terrible fate they may have to endure, even though we, the audience, know that someday everything is going to be okay again. Okay, now let me just quick fire off a few more comments, minus my responses, before wrapping this video up, starting with this one from Sean Moray Alvarado, who said, I would love to see a Vader film between episodes 3 and 4. I really think that's what we are missing, to see how powerful Darth Vader was, and to see all the struggles he is going through with the death of Padme and his former friend Obi-Wan. Then we have this comment from Matt G, who said, Bane trilogy taken straight from the novels. Then LJWR, who said, I really think the only way Star Wars can give us something new is to look to the future. Everything in the past we've seen, forwards is the only way in my opinion. Next, this comment from Dante James 4, who said, I would be very interested in a movie that explores the origins of the Jedi Order. Then we have this comment from Josh Thompson, who said, I literally just want small, character-driven stories set during or around the time period of the prequel and original trilogies. Give me more content like The Mandalorian. Give us a Vietnam-style anti-war film from the point of view of a clone trooper on Felucia. Give us a Thrawn movie. Give us a Darth Vader hunting down Jedi after the fall of the Republic. Give us a House of Cards-style political drama on Coruscant. Give us a Republic Commando movie. Show us the Battle of Jakku. Literally anything other than more soulless, directionless trilogies. And finally here we have this comment from Chronatus, who said, apparently I'm in the minority here, but I'd like to see something set far into the future. Show me something I've never seen or even imagined before. It should still be Star Wars, of course, but tell me a new and original story, one that's set within this universe, but that isn't afraid to innovate either. And again here, let me say that I'd love to see some Old Republic content, and I know we'll eventually get it because there's money to be made there. But I agree that they should think about trying something completely new and different first. Prove to us fans they can innovate, that they can add something brand new to the canon that's truly worthwhile, and then slowly but surely go back and do justice to these other eras we fans already love. And I can only imagine that's what they're going to try and do with the High Republic era, assuming all these rumors are true and that's where they're actually going next. And that it'll tie into this whole Project Luminous thing, which I've discussed in other videos. For some reason, they think this is where they can leave their creative mark. A time period that, honestly, I've never really been overly interested in because I've always assumed it was a time of relative peace, where the Jedi went unchallenged and grew in arrogance, which led to their downfall that we see in the prequels. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you think the next Star Wars movies should be about. Or let me know what you thought about what I or anyone else had to say in this video. Also, I should have a new poll up in the next day or two about something. Haven't decided what it'll be, so feel free to leave some suggestions below if you'd like. Either way, leave a comment and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.